Most people, they grab their phone and scroll down the phone to distract themselves, or they go and reach out for coffee to kickstart the system. But what they are really doing is trying to overwrite the emotional residue of yesterday because yesterday's stress wasn't resolved. It was memorized. So every emotions you feel is a chemical signature released throughout the body. When you feel anxious, you send out a cascade of stress hormone, cortisol, adrenaline into the body. If you repeat that cycle enough, your cells adapt to that internal chemistry. They begin to craft for it. They become conditioned to it. And even when your outer world is calm, your inner world continues the chaos. This is why people who suffer from chronic anxiety often say, I don't know why I feel this way. And they are telling the truth. The thought that originally created the anxiety may be long gone, but the body hasn't let it go. It is like the software of the subconscious mind is still running in the background, even though the conscious mind is not aware of it anymore. Over time, the body gets better at being anxious than the mind does. Thinking anxious thought when anxiety is no longer an optional. It feels automatic. You're not thinking your way into stress. You are being triggered by the emotional pattern that your body now expects in this state. The body is literally ahead of the mind. Imagine the brain and the body are in a relationship. The brain sends out the signal and the body responds with feeling. And those feelings are sensed by the brain, which create more thought that match those feelings. It becomes a feedback loop. If the thought is fearful, the emotion is anxious. And that anxious emotions then trigger more fearful thoughts. And the cycle continues. After enough repetition, it becomes an automatic unconscious. You don't even need a thought anymore. You are just anxious. That's the danger of letting the body become the mind and start running the show. But here's the powerful truth. You were not born like this. You were not born rehearsing worst case scenario. You were not born anticipating danger around every corner. That was learned. It was absorbed from repeated experience, emotional trauma, or simply the survival habits modeled by the people around you. And if it was learned, it can be unlearned. That's the good news. The first step is awareness. You must become conscious of the unconscious. You need to catch the body in the act. Notice when it is generating anxiety without a real trigger. This is not about blaming yourself. It is about waking up from the dream you have been living in you. Begins to feel the tension in your chest. Not as you, not as me, but as a program, as a memorized response. When you see it for what it is, you're no longer inside it. You're not in the frame. You're not in the show. You're observing it in that moment of observation. A window opens up. You have the opportunities to do something different when you become aware of that. You can take a breath. Instead of following the panic, you take a breath, stop, and then take a moment to respond. You can stay still instead of reacting. The instant you interrupt the pattern, you begin to reclaim the role of the thinker, the creator, the consciousness behind the mind and the body. This is where real change begins, not by controlling every thought, but by becoming the awareness behind the thoughts, not by fighting the body, but by teaching it a new way. to be a new emotional home, because the body isn't the enemy. The body is the student. It is just doing what it has been trained to do. It's repeat the chemistry you often give to it. And when that chemistry is fear, worry, helplessness, anxiety, it builds a personality around it. But when that chemistry becomes peace, presence, and possibility and healing, the body will respond just as powerfully. There's a moment, small, often unnoticed, where transformations begin. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It happened quietly, right in the space between the stimulus and the response. The stimulus and the response. And in between, there's the split moment where you can pause, take a deep breath in, and then respond. You feel the familiar surge of the tight chest, the restless mind, the emotional pull that wants you to react. It could be an email, a glance, a memory, or absolutely nothing at all. And your nervous system prepare for what is already done. It loops, it recycles the same chemical emotions and behavior script you have played for years. But in that instant, you can simply notice it without automatically reacting. You create a crack in the negative thought loops. They are not just bad habit of the mind. They're not just bad habit of the mind. They are reinforced neurological patterns. When you think of a thought repeatedly, the neurons that fire together wire together. They become more efficient. They connect faster. The more you run the circuit of fear, worry, and anxiety, self-doubt, the more your brain physically changes to support that. It becomes the path of least resistance, because it's not because it is the truth, but because it is familiar. The brain doesn't favor what is good for you. It favors what is predictable. That's why the same negative thought feels so comfortable even when they hurt so much. That's why we fall back into the same old story again and again. And most people are living like, I will never get better. It's always like this. Something bad is coming. It's not that those thoughts are more real. They are just more rehearsed. You have trained your brain to believe them through repetition. And now they show up like an old friends who don't even have to knock the door before entering. So to break the loops doesn't begin with positive thinking. Doesn't begin with just think positively. It begins with watching the negative one without automatically becoming them. That is the first step of change. It is the awareness, not the replacement, that weakens the grips. You begin to see the thoughts arise. You begin to observe them. I cannot handle this, or I'm not safe. And instead of letting it spiral down into the body and have the fear respond, you pause, you witness, you become the observer. In neuroscience, this is known as metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking. And it is one of the most powerful tools you have. When you watch a thought without acting on it, the emotion charged once carried begins to lose power. You're no longer reinforcing the neural pathway. You're interrupting it. You're starving it. The synaptic connections weakens. And in that space, a new choice becomes possible. People often ask, how do I stop the thoughts? But the goal is not to stop the thoughts. That is impossible. We have 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of them are unconscious. So knowing that you are not your thoughts, you're the one aware of them. When that shift happens, even the most deeply conditioned patterns can begin to dissolve. Here's something most people don't realize. Your brain doesn't care whether a thought is real or imagined. When you think of a fearful thought, your body will react as if it is happening now. The same chemical get released. The same fight or flight or free response will kick in. But this also means that the inverse is true. When you observe a fearful thought and don't react, you begin to signal safety to the body. You send a new messaging to the body that we are okay, even with this thought present. This is what starts to reprogram the subconscious, not fighting the thought, not suppressing it, but remain calm in the present. When that breaks the pattern, that's what rewires the circuit. The more often you do it, the easier it gets, the easier it becomes. The brain begins to adapt to this new pattern, one where awareness leads instead of reaction. It begins to prune away the old connections and strengthen the new one. It is not theory, it's biology. Imagine this. Every time you resist the urge to spiral, every time you observe the thought instead of feeding it, you are literally removing, scrubbing your brain, and you're carving a new groove. At first, it feels strange, unfamiliar, foreign. I'm not used to it. The body will protest because it craves for the familiar chemistry, the chemical cocktail of anxiety. But over time, the unfamiliar becomes familiar. The new loop, one of observation, peace, neutrality, start to form. Breaking the loops also require consistency. You don't do it once and expect freedom. This is a training, a mental and emotional discipline, just like lifting weight. The more you practice staying conscious, the stronger your awareness becomes. You might catch one negative thought today, then 5 tomorrow, and then 20 by the end of the week. Each time you do, you're stepping out of the autopilot and into mastery. This process is not about denying emotion. It's not about pretending either. You don't feel fear or anger or doubt. It is about not becoming those emotions, not letting them drive your behavior. The loop thrives when you act unconsciously. But the moment you observe it with presence, you take your power back. You remove the fuel from the fire. You show the brain this pattern is no longer needed. And slowly, the mind begins to listen and the body begins to respond. The loop begins to weaken. You have spent so much time memorizing the past that your body has become a living record of it. Every thought you have, every emotion you feel, and every experience you have survived have left a chemical imprint. And now, without realizing it, you wake up every morning thinking the same thought, feeling the same feelings, and behaving the same ways. It feels normal to you. It feels like who you are. But the truth is, it's just who you have been. When you live by the emotions of the past, the guilt, the shame, the fear, the anxiety, the regret, the resentment, you are conditioning your brain and your body to expect more of the same. You keep tuning your mind to a reality that is already over, and so the future becomes a continuation of the past. The same patterns repeat. The same people show up, just in a different form. The same limitations reappear, just dressed in a new costume, a new situations. And each time you confirm that belief that things never really change, but the brain doesn't care whether your thoughts are about the past or the future. It simply responds to what you give it. When you think a thought, your brain releases neurochemical that match the thought. If you think about something stressful, the body will respond with stress. If you think about something joyful, the body will respond with pleasure. Your thoughts are the language of the brain, and your feeling are the language of the body. Together, they shape your state of being. Again, your thoughts are the language of the brain. Your feelings are the language of your body. When that state becomes consistent, it becomes your personality. And your personality creates your reality. And that's why the secret of transformation is not found in trying to fix the past. It is found in creating a relationship with the future, a future you have never experienced, but one you can mentally and emotionally rehearse until it becomes familiar. This is where the future-based thinking becomes so powerful. It becomes a powerful tool, not wishful thinking, not daydreaming, but a conscious act of neural and emotional conditioning. When you begin to imagine a version of yourself who is no longer defined by the fear of limitation, you start to activate a new circuit in your brain. You light up areas that are previously dormant. You begin to remap your identity. And if you feel the emotions of that future in the present moment now, like gratitude, peace, excitement, joy, empowerment, your body begins to believe it is already happening. That's the moment you're no longer being defined by the memories of your past, but by the visions of your future. This is not just philosophy. This is physiology. The body doesn't know the difference between an experience they're having or the one you are imagining. When you fully embrace the emotions energy of a future event, your body reacts as if it is real. You begin to flood your system with new chemical, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. These are the building blocks of joy, and they're vasodilators. It opens up your heart. And we know the magnet in your heart is 1,000 more powerful than the brain. And that is a lot of energy that you're sending out to the universe. They are the building blocks of joy, connections, and healing. And when you feel these elevated emotions consistently, you begin to signal to the genes in your body that a new environment has arrived. You're not waiting for reality to change. You're becoming the change. This is the essence of aligning with the future. You don't just visualize to escape. You visualize to become. You rehearse the future so often that you're making decision, taking actions, and speaking words that are aligned with that versions of you, the future you are imagining. Stop being a distant possibility. It becomes a felt embodied truth, and your environment, by the law of coherence, begins to organize itself around your new frequency. And we talk about alignment, coherence. Your brain and your heart and your body has to be in alignment and in coherence to send out a powerful signal to the universe and tell them what you want. And by law, the universe has to respond according to the frequency that you're vibrating and you're transmitting. So, however, most people wake up and immediately reconnect with the familiar. They check their cell phone, remember who they are, think about their problems, and reinforce the neural architecture of yesterday. The emotional signature of their morning becomes a repetition of their history. But when you wake up and choose to tune into your future instead, and when you sit in stillness and ask yourself, what would it feel like to be free, to be having time and money freedom, to be able to make the impact that I always want to make? What would it feel like to be whole? Living, what would it feel like to live in peace no matter what happened? No matter what happened, outside of me, around the world, you begin to train your brain and your body to expect that future you are living. And when the body get used to those elevated emotions, it start to craft them. It craving for more. It start to wake up in anticipations of the unknown. That's when you flip the switch. You're no longer addicted to the chemicals of survival. You begin to shift from hoping things will change to knowing they are already are. You stop reacting to your external world and start generating your internal world. You're no longer waiting for evidence before you feel better. You feel better and the evidence begins to show up. And that is the difference between living from cause and living from effect. One is empowered and the other is reactive. This is the transformation work. This is the mental conditioning, the emotional training, spiritual alignment, and it is available to you at any moment. The moment you decide to stop living by memory and start living by vision.